Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sherry.
And together, we are
the Traveling Professors.
Today's show may come as kind of a surprise because I told you that we did not get to Patmos on our trip in 2016. But we had been to Patmos in 2012 on our cruise to the Mediterranean that Sherry and I took with my oldest daughter, Laura, and her husband, Matt. So you are going to get to see Patmos. It just won't be in quite as depth as it would have been because we were going to spend 2 days here rather than the pull into the ship in the morning, run around the island, and head out before dark. Sherry and I certainly hope you enjoy our walk through Patmos. Now, our cruise that we took in 2012 left from Athens, and we went to Patmos, and then we went to Kusadasi, and then we went to Israel, and then we were supposed to go to Egypt. But we didn't get to go to Egypt. We'll find out about that at another time. So we went to Santorini and then Mykonos and then up to Ravenna and then to Venice. And that's where our cruise ended. So here we are. We're going to go to Patmos, which is what we would have done in 2016. But we're not on a ferry. We're on a Princess cruise ship. It's not a big one. I think there were 600 people on the ship. So anyway, there's Patmos. And it's in the Dodecanese Islands. And the Romans loved to use the Aegean Islands, and particularly the Dodecanese Islands, as places of banishment. And Patmos is actually one of the smallest ones. It's only 13 square miles. Now, when we were on Samos, if you look at this map, you see there's Samos where we were. And I just assumed that you'd be able to get a boat to Patmos. And then we could pick up a ferry and then head on the roads. Well, not at the time we were there. Remember, we were there a little bit before the main season. You see where Samos was, and of course Kusadasi is right up here. So on the cruise, once we finish with Patmos, we take a little cruise up, and the next morning we wake up to the blaring of the call to worship in Kusadasi Harbor for our little day trip to Ephesus. So that's gives you an idea of where we are located from a geographical standpoint. Well, our journey begins in Athens, so we go down the Piraeus. There's our ship, Pacific Princess. Obviously been going around the world because it certainly isn't the Pacific Ocean. It's not the Aegean Princess. Of course, this is the boat that I showed you before of Nani and Bob going on their vacation to Greece that the kids have. So I have to put that in because they watch these shows too. On the boat, we have a balcony room. Beautiful, very nice. The bedroom and the view out the window and back the other direction. And I did have a little trouble squeezing into the shower. But we spent most of our time actually out on the balcony watching the sea go by. This turned out to be one of the bargains of the century. A friend of ours, who's actually a listener to History According to Bob, suggested that what we do is pick the best accommodation below where we would really like to be, because we wanted to have a balcony. So we picked a selection without a balcony. And generally speaking, what happens is they then upgrade you, which is exactly what they did. In addition, we had money knocked off because the year we took this trip was the year they had one of the Italian cruise line ships go down between Italy and Sicily. And people were afraid to go on cruises, so they gave us $1,000 each back. So I think this ended up costing us something like $3,500 for the whole trip, excluding airfare. So it was quite a bargain. What was funny was my daughter and her husband, they just booked our balcony room. And we got upgraded to a better room than they had. So we got a big joke about that. So that's our accommodations. Well, towards sunset, it's time to leave Piraeus Harbor. So here we are in the harbor area. You can see some of the other shipping lines, ferry lines. So we start heading out. We are approaching the jetty that protects the entrance to the harbor. And then here you get a nice view back of seeing one of the most famous harbors in all the world. And then, of course, it's not lost on me. I love ancient history. I teach ancient history. The Battle of Salamis. So here off to the side is the view of the Straits of Salamis where the battle took place. Unfortunately, as you can see, the sun is directly in my face. Several times that we've been in Greece, I've looked for a way to do a tour that way. What most people do is there is a ferry that leaves Piraeus, goes all the way down through to the main island end at Salamis, and then comes back. So it basically goes right through the middle of it. And then here is a Blue Star ferry, which is a ferry that we used frequently when we were using ferry lines in Greece. And they are quite nice on the inside. And so now we just simply go to bed after eating and doing some of the various entertainment activities. And we'll wake up heading into Patmos. Here we are coming into the Patmos area. The ship is too big to go into the harbors. They're really shallow. So the main ship will stay on the outside and just go back and forth and will be tendered in. Now, this island was used as a place of banishment from 95 to 96 AD for St. John the Evangelist. He was banished there by the Emperor Domitian, who was emperor from 91 to 96. So fortunately for St. John, he's only on the island for 1 year. Then the island was basically deserted in Byzantine times. Eventually, what happens is in 1088, the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I gave permission to an abbot named Christodoulos, whose name in the Greek translates to slave of Christ, to found a monastery. So as you come in, you see up on this large hill that looks like a fortification. That is the monastery of St. John up there. It was reinforced with heavier fortifications in the 1400s to 1500s to keep pirates from coming in. And it is in the center of basically the capital of the island, which is Cora. And then here's coming a little closer into the harbor. This is Scala, where we'll get on the buses to go where we need to go. And then here's a map of the place. You can literally walk from one side of it to the other from Scala. Go up to Patmos, which is where the cave of St. John is located. And then you go to Cora, which is where the monastery is located. So here comes the one of the tenders to pick us up and take us ashore. So we'll be going to 2 locations. The first location is the cave of St. John, and the second location will be the monastery of St. John. Well, our tour bus picked us up. We went up to the area that's associated with the cave of St. John the Evangelist. We had our guide with us, gave us a background of what was going on, what we could and couldn't do. You're not supposed to take pictures inside the churches of Orthodox churches. Unfortunately, he took pictures while we were in there. When I confronted him, he said, well, we pay them a lot of money, so we can do that. Nice view from up here, but we'll give you a better one later on. Now, here's an aerial shot showing the area. And as you can see, you go, well, where in the world is the cave of St. John? Well, what happened is, obviously, the cave was very important. And ultimately, it actually becomes a little church. But then over the years, other things are built around it. The first thing that was built there was a convent. It's called the Convent of the Apocalypse. It's the Convent of St. Anne. And that was put in there in memory of the Russian Dowager Empress Anne, who founded the convent. And there's also a theological college and a seminary that was then built later on. So you have to go into the complex to get to where the cave is located. So there's a lot of other things associated here. So here we are going into the area with the different buildings, and eventually we reach the point where we're heading towards this spot right here, which is the entrance to the church, which is where the cave of St. John eventually will be. And then here's a nice picture taken of Sherry and I by my daughter as we're getting ready to go into the cave area. And of course, you can't have a lot of people. This is one of the problems. This is why we wanted to go a second time, is that we were, I think, in here about maybe 10 minutes. You have only so many people can go in at a time. Would have liked to have stayed a little while, meditated, relaxed, said more than Our Father in the church, and just kind of taken it all in. But that wasn't possible. We just made the best of the situation that we could. And it was wonderful anyway, even though it was short. Now, the pictures of St. John's Cave, or the Cave of the Apocalypse, the first 2 I took. One of them out here is I'm standing in the entrance, getting ready to go in with my cheesy smile. That's what I was told to do. And you see the little mosaic of the process of writing in the cave and sleeping in the cave and having his associate, who is Piraeus, who was the gentleman who was with St. John, who was basically his scribe. And then you go in, and there's an antechamber prior to going into the actual church and then cave. Now, the other pictures that show the interior of that, fortunately, the monastery had books that you could buy and postcards that you could buy that illustrated this pretty well. which is fine because that made sure that there weren't people in it, because there were so many people that went in and just kind of choked everything up. So as you go through the doorway, you see the church area here, iconostasis, in the area back where the sacrament would be blessed. And the actual cave starts right over here. You see the ledge, which by the way is known as the Rock of the Trinity. And then it is underneath that. They have these nice pews where the process of writing St. John's Gospel took place, the book of the Apocalypse. If you get closer to it, supposedly this area right in here where the flowers are is an area where there's a silver frame in the ground that looks like a pillow, and they claim that St. John had slept there. And then up above it is where his desk was located. But there are several other stories. Some people claim that St. John slept up here on the top, or Prochorus did. And at any rate, this is the area where the Gospel of the Apocalypse was composed. So that is the Cave of the Apocalypse, the Cave of St. John. Now we're going to go down and get on our bus and then head to our next stop, which is the monastery. Well, on the way back down to the bus, here is the view that you can really get a nice shot of Scala, of the harbor that we came into. We're about 469 feet up at this point. And then we head down to our bus, get in it, and then head towards Cora. This is, of course, the city is in white, and then you see the monastery fortress, and this is the icon of Christodoulos, showing his monastery that he built. And here's an aerial view of the area, and you can see the white zone, which is inside the fortifications, which certainly did keep pirates away. And there's quite a bit of walking to do here because you really can't drive a bus up into this region. So once we get to Cora, this is the view we had as we got out of the bus. And then as we start walking up, it seems like it got further away, and ultimately we do end up directly in front of the monastery entrance. So the first thing we will do is go into the church. So we're into the monastery, and you see this open area. The lower floor is where the floor that we're on is where you will find the church and the crypt. And then the second floor you have the museum and the library, and then you can also climb up to the roof. So once you walk through into the middle and you turn around and see the wonderful set of bells that towers over the entrance. And then here we have the group kind of wandering around. Now we'll go through that door right here on the right-hand side, and that will bring us into the antechamber of the church, which you see right here, where you would go through the door to the main part of the church. You'll see some of the mosaics and things up above. There's a lot of damage on them. What happens is they've had earthquakes periodically. Sometimes the stucco and the stuff will come off, and they have found older paintings underneath them. And so they basically have left those alone. Now, one of the things that happened when we entered the church, as Orthodox Christians, Sherry and I would do the sign of the cross. And it is normally an Orthodox version. It's forehead, stomach, right shoulder, left shoulder. Other people, it's usually left shoulder, right shoulder. We were the only people that did two things. One is, you go into an Orthodox church, you should cover your head if you're a woman. So Sherry always carries a shawl. When we were in Islamic countries, she always carried a covering for her head. When we were in Egypt, they actually taught her how to do it the way the locals did, which is really fun. And the other is you make the sign of the cross as you enter. Well, the group that we were with, we were at the back. We were the only ones who did that. And the guy at the door stopped us and asked, were we Orthodox? And we said yes. And he said, then let me take you someplace no one else can see. And what he did was he took us to the chapel of Christodoulos, which is what you see here. And he allowed us to take some pictures. And this is the burial site of Christodoulos. That silver sarcophagus is where the original abbot monk body was laid. Now, it was not silvered when he died. It was just a regular sarcophagus. However, Catherine the Great had it covered with silver. And I found this picture looking online, and then evidently the Russian government had also given a special covering to go over it. So here you see the special covering, but that was not there when we were visiting. Then maybe they used it at different times. Really interesting. They showed us some of the other relics that were there. They had the head of St. John the Baptist, okay? Now you know there are 3 of them that are floating around. So we were sure that Christodoulos was the real thing. It's just a real honor to be in a relic area like that. By the time we got in the church, most of the group had left. So we had that kind of to ourselves. So here was a and the gentleman said, "There's no one else here. Please take a couple of pictures." And so here is the main entrance to the church, the iconostasis in the front. And then here is the view of the ceiling with the dome with Christ at the top of it. That was just an awesome experience. And then we went outside. The rest of the people are just kind of milling around. We realized we didn't have a lot of time. They were going to start going back to the bus because people are wanting to have lunch and something else. So we're going to hurry up and try to go to the museum. We did not have permission to go to the library, but I do have some pictures of the library. So let's run upstairs real quick. Well, Sherry and I climbed upstairs, the second level, and went into the museum. Now here's the picture that I was able to take as we entered the museum, but you're not allowed to take pictures in the museum. So I searched around online and found a couple of other pictures that others had done. It has quite an interesting collection. So here's a set of candle holders, beautiful icon chandelier, and then this one shows two interesting pieces. The long narrow one is part of the 24-foot, 4-inch deed of foundation given by Emperor Alexis to the abbot Christodulus. And next to it is what is known as the Codex Piraeus, which is part of St. Mark's Gospel. It's done on special purple paper with gold ink. And then the icon that you see here is one of the oldest icons of St. Nicholas. It's from the 1100s. Then after we finished with the museum, we went by the library, but that is only, you have to have a reservation to go in there. This is one of the finest Orthodox libraries of theology in the world. Really, only Mount Athos has a more extensive library. Pictures I found online of the reading room and some of the shelving, and then here is one of the works that they had on display. So that was our quick run into the museum and to the library. Fortunately, the group had not left us, so we were able to walk across and go up onto the roof where the bells are and get a nice view of the area. Here's a little small church up at the very top where the monks like to gain some solitude. And there's a view of Scala and the whole harbor area. And there's my daughter, my oldest daughter Laura, and her husband Matt. And then we went with the rest of the group down to the bus and went back to the town of Scala, where we had, an hour or two look around. We found the little courtyard area, the little center of the town, and had lunch. And then we walked around the beach, nice beautiful view of the beach, and there I am standing in my Welcome to History According to Bob stance. And you can see the monastery up on the hill. And of course, Sherry's a sea person, so she has to get into the water. So she wandered around and got a little water, and then we simply waited for the tender to come in. They came in periodically. So there's our ship waiting for the tenders to come in, and ultimately we got on one of the tenders, and here's a view of us heading back to the Pacific Princess, and then a view of the setting sun. Now, in this case, Sherry and I on this cruise are going off to Kusadasi. We're going to go see Ephesus. But as far as our trip that I'm doing with the islands, our next stop will be Rhodes.
Sherry and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packet, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.